Welcome to In the News for October the 1st, 2021. I am Brett Birdie from AppsandLaw.com.
This is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD. Happy October, Brett. Hard to believe it.
My goodness, I cannot believe it. It's too fast. There's too many leaves on the ground now. I get crazy. Well, so in the news, I loved your first paragraph on here. Billions and billions sold. I had no idea, like you said, as you referenced here, that Apple stopped releasing like iPhone sales numbers a few years ago. So nobody really knows the exact number, but you linked to this really interesting story here where it's saying that Apple just sold the 2 billionth iPhone, which is just a little insane. Crazy stuff. And somebody can check my math, by the way, but I just did a little bit of Googling in my unscientific method. I believe that is twice the number of automobiles that have been sold worldwide in the same amount of time. Somebody can check me. That's fine. But that was mind blowing to me. 2 billion iPhones. That's incredible.
Yeah, talk about iPhone saturation. There are just so many out there. And of course, it's also interesting that, the iPhone comes out in 2007 and they got to the 1 billion was in 2016, I guess it was. So
right.
It took, what's the math there? It took, that many years, 9 years to get to the first billion. And now we're at 5 years to get to the second billion. And, the third billion, maybe as we're talking, they're at the third billion already. I don't know. I forget how math works, but they are selling them quickly now that especially now that we got the iPhone 13 out there.
I was just going to say, you have contributed to that 3 billion numbers, I guess. You had an excellent review of the iPhone 13 Pro. You've had it now. I looked at this quickly, Jeff, and I thought to myself, oh my, I got to set aside some time to read this. But I timed it myself. It's only a 5-minute read, but it is excellent. You did a great job going through with some pictures. We got to visit the Audubon Zoo. We got to visit your bar with the Peychaud bitters. It's all good stuff on there. I love it. I love it.
Absolutely. So, the theme is this, if step one is it time for you to get a new iPhone? And that's totally a personal decision.
Right.
Maybe you get one every year like I do. Maybe you wait 2 years. Maybe you wait 5 years, but step one is, are you ready for an iPhone? And you pretty much know if you're ready. But if you are ready, right. I know that some people say, well, I'm on the fence, but I want to wait until it's a good year to upgrade. And that makes total sense. And I think this is a great year to upgrade. And the reason that I say that is that Apple changed the design last year so that the new iPhone has the flat sides on it. Just holding mine up to the camera here, the sides are flat, which makes it so much easier to hold in your hand. And it's the reason that I love this iPhone, because I really don't need to use a case very often with it because it doesn't slip out of my hand. But then, although I do have a case that I'll talk about in a second. So it's a great design. It's got some great features. But then what Apple did, and that all came out a year ago. But then this year, Apple has bumped up the things that matter the most for people. It's better battery life, which is super nice. It's better cameras, which is great. So it's just like, getting these little bit better things, a little bit faster and stuff like that. So it's great. It's like they've perfected last year's iPhone, and this is a really good iPhone. The review that I posted, you're scrolling through it, and there's a million pictures in it, because I really think one of the for some battery life is great for some people, and I will tell you, I'm really noticing it. I've had days like yesterday where I was using my iPhone all day at work. And then at the end of the day, my daughter had a volleyball game. And so I went and I filmed the volleyball game, and they had like game 1, it was game 2 was a tie. And then they went to a game 3. And I videoed the whole thing in 4K HDR on my phone, which takes up a ton of, battery and everything else. And I was recording for, I don't even know how long, an hour and a half or something like that. And when I finished, I looked at my battery life, and it's like, oh yeah, we still got plenty to go here. And it was just incredible. And I know whenever you get a brand new phone, it's going to have a new battery in it. So it's going to be particularly good. But this year, it's really good. So we talked about this last week on the podcast, that my hope was that at the end of the day, when in the past you might be just a little, getting low and you might need to stick on a battery or something like that. This one, if it has an extra hour and a half or 2.5 hours, it'll get you through that. Oh no, you're fine. And so far, and again, early for me, but so far that's true. But so battery life's one thing, but the camera, it's just a fantastic
Your pictures
camera.
Are great on here.
Oh, and this is one, if you don't care about cameras, well then fine. If you don't care about, the nicer screen on it, then just get the iPhone 13. But if you do take pictures, the iPhone 13 Pro is the one to get, because it's got that 3x telephoto, which is great. I was just using it yesterday when I was, in the stands trying to take pictures of my daughter and the other girls playing volleyball. 3x makes a big difference of getting closer to the action.
Yeah.
And then the the macro lens is really cool too. And you don't use a macro lens every day, but every once in a while
incredible.
you want to get close and take a picture. And what I think is funny, I was mentioning the case. It used to be in the past, the cameras stick out the back of the iPhone a little bit.
Right.
And in the past years, when you put it in the case, that sort of accounted for the camera sticking out, and it was flat.
Right.
But this year, the back of the case actually has a little bump on it. So even when you put your iPhone in, and I get the little dunk that I'm putting in my case here, it's still got a little bump on the back. These cameras, they definitely stick out. You absolutely notice them, to the point that I've sort of wondered, like, if I'm putting my iPhone flat down on a desk, am I gonna hurt
Would you damage it?
lenses?
Right.
And again,
right.
I really wouldn't, because the fact that they are just a tiny hair bigger than before. But this is one iPhone that when you hold it in your hand and your fingers just sort of touch the back, you're like, oh wow, I really notice it's a little bit bigger of a camera.
It.
And what
right.
do you get with that? You get some fantastic pictures. So I love the last thing I'll say is that when I showed this in some of the pictures, I would often take a picture when I was at the zoo or wherever else, where I would start with the ultra wide.
Yes,
so,
I love that.
One half, really big. You get the full scene. Then move
right.
into the standard camera, which is called the wide camera, regular old picture. And then you go to the 3x zoom, where you get real in, and you literally have 3 different pictures. The one I showed of the elephants, I think, showed it well.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Wide,
yes.
You're seeing a fountain. And then when it's regular, you're seeing some elephants. And then with the 3x, suddenly you realize that there's something way.
There's a golf cart.
There are 3 completely different pictures, all taken from the same spot, just because of the flexibility of having 3 cameras. So whether you're taking pictures of, a zoo, or your kids, or your relatives, whatever it is, the nice thing about a telephoto is it also gives you the ability to create sort of a natural bokeh effect. If you use the telephoto lens and stand back, you can take a picture that the background is nicely blurred. Of course, independently, you can use the portrait feature to do the same thing through software. But even if you don't want to use software, if you just want a more natural effect, the 3x telephoto lens gets you that. It's just, it is every year I get to the point where, like, this is so good. Do I really?
How can it be better?
Do I need my Nikon SLR camera anymore? And it sort of sits on the side and gets dust on it. And I feel bad for it. And this is a very, very nice iPhone. Everything that you love about the iPhone is as good as it's ever been. Great one. And
you're
if photography is important to you, get the Pro.
You're not the only one that likes this so much. You had a link to our friend David Sparks. This video, it's a little long, but it's amazing. He took the iPhone 13 Pro, I believe is what he has, to Disneyland, which he's a big fan, and he goes to the Star Wars. But one of these, I don't know if I can zip to it quickly, but the thing that fascinated me most is kind of like we were talking about with that bokeh effect. Let me see if I can see it, where he's doing like the selfie camera, and he's blurring out the background behind him. I may not be able to get there in here, but I know somewhere in here. And that was just amazing to me that it looked as good as it looked in there. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's that scene. I might be able to find it here.
Yeah.
But even he was talking about the fact that's the front facing camera, which I know, as he says in here, he's like, that's the worst camera in the iPhone. And even still, that is looking amazing how he is performing that in there. And then he's got some other great stuff that he does in here. I think at one point he says, we'll do, here's the scene I'm talking about. You can see him, and the back is a little blurred. It's not really sort of the full bokeh effect that you were talking about, but that's pretty amazing. And then my favorite part in here where he goes, most people, if they're showing slow-mo, it's like a ripped guy ripping his shirt off, or a lovely young lady or something. But he's like, no, we're going to do slow-mo with the sexy Mark Twain steamship. And I just love that. Anyway, it was good that you linked it, but he's the same way. He was going through all the iterations, and we know David looks at this a lot, and it's just really neat. This video that you linked to is really good. If you want to get a little bit more of like the video components of it, of what it can do in addition to your photos, I think that's really, really good.
Yeah, that bokeh effect you were talking about that I mentioned as well. It's it's just the idea that you're blurring the background and the subject is in focus in the foreground. It's one of those things that lots of times if you might think about it, but when you show your pictures to someone else, they're probably not going to even think about the fact that there is bokeh, that there's not bokeh. They're just going to think this looks like a more professional picture. It looks like a nice picture.
Yes.
It looks like the picture I might want to blow up and put on my wall or put in a frame. And so I love that. And you get it with no extra work. You just take the picture. If you want to get more extreme version, you can click on cinematic mode for video or portrait mode. But you don't need to, as you were just showing, it's producing images that are really, really good.
Yeah. And the other thing quickly, I'll just say at the very beginning of this video, it was amazing to me. He's walking through holding his iPhone, and he's talking about the fact that he's watching it on the iPhone. And he says on the video, this looks like it's very jittery to me, but you can see the final product because of all of the crazy computations going on inside that iPhone. It's stabilizing the image, and that looks amazing. I mean, to me, that is cinema quality that he's doing right on his iPhone. And he's not even putting it on a gimbal. He's not even putting it on anything. He's literally just holding it in his hand, similar to what you're talking about, going to the sports activities and stuff. It's really just amazing. We kept talking about how
I had the exact same thought when I saw the beginning of that video. And I remember with early iPhones, when I would take video either for myself or sometimes even when I posted them on iPhone JD, when you walked around, you would definitely see up and down, and it might get you a little seasick. Exactly. And now, I mean, it's magic what they've done. It is very smooth. It is one step away from having, professional video people with like one person pushing a cart that the other person sitting on the cart holding the camera.
Right.
I mean, it's not quite there, but to do this with you just holding it in your hand. Now, I will mention that he's not using his hand. He's actually using this thing that I've mentioned on this podcast.
Yeah,
before.
There he is.
You're showing it right there. It's a grip made by Studio Neat, which I love. In fact, I was using that when I was taking video at my daughter's volleyball game yesterday because it allows you to hold your camera. It just makes it easier on your hand. You don't get the fatigue of holding your camera for a period of time. So,
but it doesn't have any stabilization on it, right? It literally is just like. It's just a handle. Just a handle. Yeah. Interesting. That's great. Well, another story that you linked to, by the way, I mean, I think we probably have covered enough about the battery and the cameras. Although I have seen, and I'm glad that you mentioned it, I have seen some people mention the fact that bump on the camera is a little bit more noticeable. I don't think it's terrible. And like you said, I like to get cases really for that reason many times. It just has a little tiny of a bump around that case, around that camera bump, the full bump, so that it kind of protects a little bit. But I'm not going too nuts about it. It's just nice to kind of to know that I have that. Yeah. So just quickly, another story you linked to, by the way, Jeff, which I thought was good. If people are wondering which one of the iPhone 13 family to get, because we have the mini, which a lot of people love that it's so tiny. And then there's the iPhone 13 regular, I guess, right? Then we have the iPhone 13 Pro, and that's what you and David Sparks are talking about. And then there's the Pro Max, which I have to tell you, like 2 or 3 other people that I've seen, the 13 Pro, not the Max, not the regular, is really the just right phone. Like you mentioned it already, Jeff. The camera is a little bit better. The battery life. It seemed like that they really put in the most work into making this almost the quasi perfect camera, if you will, the perfect iPhone. But there's room for the other models as well. But this was a good article, I thought, on this. The Goldilocks phone, just right.
The Goldilocks phone. I agree with that 100%. The 13 mini, it's small. I mean, we used to use iPhones that small, but by today's standards, it's small. So it's going to be a little bit harder to type on. The 13 Pro Max and the other extreme, it's big. I mean, you can use it, and it's nice to see things big, but you're getting close to almost having a small iPad there. That size that the 13 and the 13 Pro have, it is the Goldilocks side. It's the just right size. And so then the only difference is, one of them is $200 more than the other. Do you care about having much better cameras? Because of the telephoto lens and the macro and other features? Do you care about having a little bit more battery life? And do you care about this thing called ProMotion, which makes the screen much smoother?
I was going to ask you.
I love ProMotion. When I look at it, it makes me feel like I'm using a more premium product with my phone. Does it change the way I work? No. I mean, there's nothing I couldn't do before that I can do with ProMotion. It's just nicer. So if you're okay
it feels
with
better.
that, and if you're okay with, I don't need that niceness. The 13's got enough battery life. And maybe, I don't have, my kids are out of the house or whatever, don't have kids. I don't take pictures enough that if pictures don't matter to you and there's other ones, well, great. Save yourself $200 and get the 13 because otherwise the 13's got all the other features. But if those 3 features matter to you, just spend the extra $200, get the 13 Pro. And it's really nice.
Fantastic. Oh, that's good. Okay. Well, you and I think, could continue talking about the iPhone 13, but maybe we should move on just in the sense that I think we've pretty much given what a lot of folks I think would be the most important thing on it. But I don't have it yet. I keep getting all these text messages now from Apple like, hey, you're due for an upgrade. You're ready for an upgrade. You should do an upgrade. And it's getting harder and harder not to pull that trigger. I'm sure that I will very soon because I do like those cameras, and it's just been amazing on that.
What are you walking around with right now, Brett, before you move on? What camera do you use?
A 12 Pro. It's a 12 Pro.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. It's hard to justify the
I know.
12 Pro. Yes, the 13 Pro is nicer, but the 12 Pro is also really good too.
Right.
So, you know,
right.
it's you can make an argument there.
I think I even saw real quick somebody, you know, you posted this down at the bottom, but there was a comment at the bottom of your review. Mm-hmm. He's like, thanks for Jay was like, thanks for the review. This is great, but I'm going to still hang on to my 11 Pro. Yeah, and I would still agree with that, right? Like, in other words, exactly. It's a great phone, and it's like just exactly what you said, Jeff. I like the way you're positioning that. You know, if you're fine with what you have and you don't really care about, you know, the additional crazy, amazing photography and video features on there, then you're perfectly fine with 11. I would even maybe say a 10 is still probably perfectly fine for a lot of folks on there. But anyway, good coverage on that iPhone 13, and I'm sure we'll continue to see more and more movies come out with that. Another thing that you linked to, I saw this announcement. I had no idea this was going to be happening, but Apple this week announced some updates to their iWork suite, right? This is Pages and Numbers and Keynote, which is, I always tell people it's sort of like, you know, Apple's versions of Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, right? Mm-hmm. And in front, because I use both and interchangeably, but Apple had a pretty big update to iWork, and there were some good changes to Pages and some good updates to Numbers, but boy, everybody has been going nuts about the updates made to Keynote, and mainly because you can now integrate live video into Keynote. I thought that was great. You had a great links to 6 colors here from Jason Snell.
Yeah, Jason does a nice job of explaining the new features. I have to tell you, this using live video in Keynote, I use Keynote extensively, but this is
me too.
Far beyond anything I've done. I have yet to do like a presentation that's got something live in it. I have yet to do a presentation where I am sharing it with another person so that maybe we're both remotely concerned, you know,
right.
You can do these pretty sophisticated things. And I tell you, you know, the Microsoft Office products, they are the, you know, what's the phrase, 100-pound, the 1,000-pound gorilla, whatever, that 2-ton gorilla, whatever.
They're the standard. Everybody's got to use those, right?
And so, for example, you know, I've never thought that Pages is really as good as Word. And for me, and maybe I'm biased because I've been using Microsoft Word since the mid 1980s, but I don't see a lot of use for Pages in my life. But
right.
Keynote is better than PowerPoint.
Exactly.
And Numbers is not as sophisticated as Excel, but it's much more approachable, which is what I like about it. So you just need to work with Numbers. And if you want to create really good looking charts, Numbers does a great job with it. Now, so the new feature here that they've added is the ability to do a pivot chart, which is one of these more sophisticated things in Excel where you have a whole bunch of data and it sorts it in a way that it groups it by category, and it makes it easier to sort of, you know, if you have a whole bunch of numbers and information of, you know, sales data, you can pull out important information more easily with a pivot chart. So, you know, bravo for having a pivot table in Numbers. But again, that's at the edge. You know, Numbers, just for the simple old, I just want to create a simple little chart of, you know, these things up and down and these things up and right.
Agreed.
Numbers does a great job with that. And I use it, you know, from like my personal needs when I just need to keep track of something, or even for some of the cases, they're just some, I'm not an accountant. I'm not doing anything like that. For the simple numbers uses I have, I love Numbers.
It's
and again,
good.
back to Keynote. Keynote is just so easy to use and so powerful. Literally, when we're done recording this right now, Brett, I have a client call. I say call, it's going to be a video conference using Microsoft Teams. And when I was getting ready for it last night, I just wanted to show them something. And so I'm like, I just need to have, like, you know how when you're doing a video conference, you can share your screen and show, you know, a presentation. I use a PC at work, and I'm like, so let me just use PowerPoint, and I'm going to put together 3 or 4 slides to put something up. And I started doing it on my PC and PowerPoint. And it's like, this is just such a pain. And so I said, I spent 3 or 4 minutes. I'm like, I am not wasting my time here. I went to my iPad. I very quickly used Keynote, where it was so much easier to move the objects around and put things on top of each other, and use the where you remove the borders on something, the instant
alpha is what that's called.
So it literally took me 5 minutes.
It's so
to put together beautiful slides in Keynote. And then I exported them to PowerPoint. And I double checked in PowerPoint that everything came across fine, and they did. And now I have a great PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to be using in about 30 minutes, but I made the whole darn thing in Keynote because it's so much easier. So
that's great. That's
I'm
great.
glad that Apple has these iWork apps, and they're really nice to have around.
I just gave a presentation to a group of actually Mac using lawyers last week, Jeff, and that was a slide that I had because I talked about using Keynote and PowerPoint, and I had a slide that it's like compared Word to Pages, and I said Word for sure. Like, I know there's a place for Pages, but I'm always using Word. Excel and Numbers, I use them both. If it's an Excel spreadsheet, it does work a little bit better in Excel, but like for CSV files, which is, like a comma delimited file or something other specific, something simple that I need, I open Numbers. So I use them both. But when it comes to PowerPoint and Keynote, I'm always Keynote. So it's just kind of weird that it's, I flop back and forth on those, but I just find that they're much easier for exactly the reasons you're talking about there. I use PowerPoint. I've known PowerPoint. I've been using it for years and years and years, but absolutely no question that Keynote, it's the absolute place that I go. And, we're talking about this. These updates came to the Mac, but also because Apple, manages all of these devices, it's available also in the iPhone and the iPad. And so we can move on, but the biggest thing here in Keynote that got me most excited, you can see this is what Jason Snell is demonstrating here, is that you can put live video in a slide the same way like you can insert a picture or insert text. You can insert a live video from the iPad camera, or in this case, he's also showing you can insert like a screencast of your iPhone or something else. Now, that's as far as I kind of got, because in my mind, I'm trying to like wrap all of my mind, because I can do Zoom and I can have video of me, right, with also sharing my screen. So why would I put my video inside a Keynote slide? I don't know how that's going to work yet. I feel like a little bit of a black hole implosion happening right now, but it's just a matter of time. I mean, I guess from an educational perspective, and I think somebody else was talking about this. Here's another shot from Apple that they showed. Like, if you're a teacher, you could create a presentation, have your slides, and then have like your little live video inside the slide. And so it's all kind of wrapped up as a video that, the students could download, and it's you and a slide.
Right.
Again,
so I don't think
we're going to get there.
Yeah. If you were giving a presentation live, you don't need this because your audience can look at you and your audience can look at the screen. But if you're giving a presentation over a video conference, like what I'm about to do in 30 minutes, it's nice to be able to show off information on slides while also having your face on there too. And there are products also like and other ones, and even Microsoft Teams is adding the ability to put your face in the corner. So this is just another example of that. And so bravo to Apple.
Yeah, and that's good. And the other thing they mentioned, which again, I have not attempted yet, and because I don't know if I could accept this either, multi-presenter support. That's going to be great. Maybe we could do that one day with all the virtual conferences and presentations we're doing. It's good that, maybe multiple people can do it, but we'll see how that works. But I thought it was great that you linked to it, and we mentioned that some of those iWork apps have been updated. So from that, let's talk about keyboards for a little bit. I don't know if we've really dug into keyboards, but you had a neat link to something that I found very interesting, the Logitech MX Keys, which is a mini keyboard and really kind of a mini version of the keyboard that I think you use and love every day for multiple reasons. Also from Logitech, which is great. They do make some really great keyboards for a variety of cases.
Yeah. What you're showing on screen is a review I did a year ago, and I'm holding it in my hand here. This is my all-time favorite keyboard ever. It's called the Logitech MX Keys. I love it because it's a full-size keyboard. So it's got the number pad. It's got the separate place for the
whole
numbers,
thing.
so it's no compromise. But the one killer feature on it is that on the top, sort of on the right there are 3 keys that you can assign those 3 keys to be associated with 3 different devices. And so my first key is assigned to my PC, my computer. My second key is assigned to my iPhone, and the one on the right is assigned to the iPad.
Yes.
And so when I'm working in my office, normally it's connected to my computer, and I'm typing along, typing on my computer. And then I turn to my iPad, which is just, a couple inches to the left of my computer. Right. And I can tap one key, and suddenly the keyboard is paired to the iPad, and then I'm typing on
Brilliant.
the iPad because I want to, maybe write an email quickly on the iPad while I'm working on
Right.
some documents on my computer. And then I
Absolutely.
very rarely need to use an external keyboard for my iPhone. But, sometimes my iPhone's over there and I'm like, texting something to my wife, and it's just easier to
Yes,
have a keyboard
that's
right in
how
front of you.
right.
So that killer feature of switching between 3 devices and not having to take the time to repair when you go back and forth, it makes all the difference in the world.
Absolutely.
So the new product that's announced here, the MX Keys Mini, is it gives you everything that I just described, but it cuts off the keyboard on the right. So it's a much smaller, more compact keyboard. It's very similar to a keyboard that Apple has sold for years called the Magic Keyboard.
Yes.
Come with, with all new Apple computers. And so it's just a smaller version. And the cost is about the same. So it's really just a question of, do you have the space and the desire for an extended keyboard, which I personally like, because I like the low keypad on the side,
right?
Just
of
if
course.
I have to enter numbers, or do you want something that's really compact? They're both great keyboards, but I definitely recommend it. And so this is the number one keyboard I use in my office. I wish I had one of these at my house, but I just not too long ago bought a new Apple extended keyboard at my house, and so I can't justify. Maybe one day I'm going to replace it.
Right.
But I'll mention one more thing about keyboards before we go on, which is the when I'm on the go. I'm going to a deposition or I'm traveling to a hotel room. What I actually carry with me is I do use one of those Apple Magic keyboards, and I have it inside of a case made by a company called Studio Neat called the Canopy, which it folds around it so that it protects the keys so that you don't have to worry about something not going to key off. But then it unfolds into a stand, so I put my iPad on it.
Yeah.
And I use it when I travel. And, frankly, especially during the pandemic, sometimes my son will be using my big computer to play games or something, and I just want to sit somewhere in the house and do some work, and I'll set this up and use it. So that's the other keyboard recommendation that I have. But that's it for me for keyboards.
Yeah, I like this. I can't remember. I've used a similar thing. I don't know if it was Studio Neat or maybe it was a previous name of a company, but it was a very similar, like kind of a leatherette or plastic thing, but it would fold. The back of it would fold. This is a great picture that you have here, so that it literally became a stand for the iPad. Now today, we'll typically be using the Apple keyboards. If you want to make that investment,
that's an alternative.
Right. Absolutely. But I do like this because I can use this. The reason I liked it is because I could carry that Apple keyboard, and I would use it with a computer, but I could also use it with the iPad. But I will tell you, I'm thrilled to hear that you use that Logitech MX Keys in that way, because I started doing that for my own keyboard. In fact, I got a similar keyboard for my wife. Mine, I not too long ago, about a year ago, I think I got into, I want to get a mechanical keyboard, and this is the one that I landed on, this Keychron, which I love. It's excellent here. It doesn't have the number pad on the side, and I thought about that, but I liked it. It was big enough for me, and I love it. I type so fast on this and so much more accurately on that mechanical keyboard. But the other thing is exactly what you're talking about, Jeff. I love the fact I can pair this with 2 other devices, and I have it paired with my iPad and my iPhone. Similar to you, Jeff, if I'm working, doing something, and somebody texts me, is when I typically find that I want to switch it, and answer it on my iPhone. Yeah, I could pick up my iPhone and I could, thumb type it, but I could just hit a key on my keyboard. My iPhone is sitting right there, switches over to my iPhone. I reply, and then I can switch the keyboard back to my computer and keep on working. I love the fact that we're talking about that. And then I'll just quickly say, this is a keyboard that I got for my wife, who actually doesn't use a computer very much. She only uses her iPad. Now, this is a very hefty keyboard, but you can see that little green strip there is where her iPad sits. And she also actually puts the iPad in portrait mode and her iPhone in that same slot. And that little switch over on the left, if you can see it there, that does the exact same thing we're talking about. It switches between the iPhone and the iPad. And if she had another device, you could switch into that as well. But she loves it because she can sit there on her lap and use this keyboard with both the iPhone and the iPad. So I thought it was just great when I saw that you were using that Logitech MX Keys and talking about the fact you can switch back and forth. And then this link to the story that you had, the MX Keys Mini as well. Logitech makes some great stuff. The one that I got from my wife was Logitech as well. I just wanted a mechanical keyboard. That's why I went to Keychron. But I love the idea of being able to switch back and forth. It's almost like that's my workspace. And I don't want to have separate keyboards for everything. I like having one single keyboard that can quickly, immediately switch between the different devices. And that's not going away. I think I'm going to keep doing that more and more. So the other thing that you had a link to, which I thought was interesting, we've talked about your mesh network, your mesh Wi-Fi, the eero, but you had a great link to a story here. I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. They were upset with their current router, and they were asking me, what about the mesh? Should I go into a mesh? And I was like, well, it's not quite as easy as this is what you need. You could just upgrade your router, a single router, and that might be fine. But in some cases, the mesh Wi-Fi network could be something that you need. I just like the fact that they talked about here. Solving Wi-Fi problems is a bit like finding a unicorn. It's not just a simple answer on there. I know you like your eeros on there, but I thought it was good that you linked about mesh Wi-Fi. I'll bring up your review here.
My summary of all of this is, if your house is small enough that a single router is going to get you from all throughout your house, just do it. If you have a larger house, if you have the ability to use some sort of a wire to connect two different points, whether it's a mesh or non-mesh, that's nice, which is what I have at my house for two of mine. But if not, if your house is big enough, and or if you've got some building materials that are making it hard to get a signal in certain parts of the house, my strong preference is to go towards one of the mesh systems. And I like eero because it's so easy to use, but there are other companies that make mesh systems too that are a little bit cheaper. You pay a tiny bit more with the eero for just ease of use. So that's just a decision you can make. But yeah, it's
I like
great
hearing
that we have these options.
Absolutely. And just quickly, I liked hearing you talk about how you use is it an app, or you use the Apple HomeKit to control this or watch over your mesh network, or maybe both, I guess.
Eero has an app. And so you can look at the Eero app and you can see what your health is and stuff like that. Eero also works with HomeKit in that it can take advantage. Eero can make it, and we may have discussed this in a prior podcast, that you can make things more secure, so that if you have devices on your home network that are doing something that they shouldn't be doing, somebody hacked into one of your doorbell and is trying to use that as an access point to something else. Eero takes advantage of a HomeKit security feature to prevent against that. So you get, and so that's nice to get some extra security. Again, is a hacker ever going to try to hack into my system at my house? I don't know, but it's nice knowing that I've got yet another barrier against them.
All right. Quick public service announcement. Another link that you provided, which I wasn't even aware of. Apparently there's a little bit of a bug in iOS 15 that if you delete an iMessage thread that has photos in it, that it could also delete your photos for good, which is a little bit scary.
If you have saved one of the photos from the thread to your photos reel, when you delete the thread, it also deletes the photo from your photos library, which is totally counterintuitive and should not happen. I almost never delete threads on my iPhone. I don't text with that many people. The only thing I delete are like the spam things that come in. But so this is very much of a small use case. But if you find that you want to delete a thread of messages, just pause and think, did I save any pictures from this thread? And hopefully Apple will fix this in the next update and won't have to worry about it.
I'm pretty sure they're going to fix that, but I just wanted to make sure people are aware of that. Like, if you're going to delete that in iMessage conversation, yes, please make sure that you think about the photos in that as first. Okay. How about a couple of tips? One that I had is, this is an Apple Watch tip on here. I've been using, I still have an Apple Watch 5, so it's not even the most recent, but we haven't talked about what was the Watch OS 8 update. Is that right? That just came out? And there's not a whole, ton of big changes in that. Maybe that's why we haven't talked about it. And this has actually been around. So even if you have an older version, that's fine. But I have been enjoying my Apple Watch even a little bit more over this last week. But one of the things that I'm constantly using, especially when I go out running or jogging, or go out on an outside walk. I'm now competing with both my daughter and my wife, so I have to get all the points that I can get every single day. So I go into a workout mode, and I love how you can select what workout mode if you're going on a hiking trip, or you're going outdoor walk or indoor walk, whatever it may be. But then when you do that, it goes into this screen, which is basically like the workout view, right? And it will always show me the time that has elapsed. It'll show me the length that I've gone, the distance that I've run, and maybe my heartbeat. And I hadn't really thought about what information is on there. It was just kind of like, okay, well, that's what I have to look at. But no, you can actually go in and you can customize this. And I love this. So now for my outdoor run, I have the duration of the run. I have my current heart rate, my current pace, and then like my distance. But if you go into, you have to do this. I think you can do it some in the watch, but I do it from the phone. I go into the workout, the Apple Watch app, go into workout, then go to workout view. And then I can say on my outdoor run, I want to see these options on here. I want to see, these items on this workout view on my Apple Watch. But maybe for hiking, you want to see the elevation gain. So you can go in and customize that when you're on a hiking, you can say on the Apple Watch in my hiking workout, I want to see these items instead of, different items. I just love the fact that you can customize that. I really wasn't aware of it. Now you can only show 5, I think. You can't, you can't go too crazy, but you can just customize and edit them and, move them up and down and to customize the way that you view it as you are doing your workout. So that's my tip. Again, it's been around for a while. It's not anything new in watchOS 8. But just because I've been working on my watch a little bit more or enjoying it a little bit more, that one of the things that I'm constantly using it for is workouts. And now you can customize the workout view, which is neat.
Yeah, I've used this tip before too. And the reason that I like it is when you're like running or something, when you glance at your watch to see whatever statistic it is that you want to see, what you really want to do is look at your watch for the briefest fraction of a second and then get back to your run. Because if you're staring at your watch for more than a second or two, you're going to like bump into something, or, you want to,
right.
So
it doesn't work out.
If you can put the number, like I know that the very top thing that I want is my elapsed distance, or maybe the very top thing that I want is my calories burned, or, whatever it is.
Yes.
If you decide intentionally whether you want this at the top, this in the middle, this at the bottom, then when you glance at your watch and look at it for that fraction of a second, you know exactly where to look. That's the key. So,
and bonus, just real quick, I didn't even realize this either, but on the watch, if you are in that workout view, Jeff, and you turn your crown, it'll highlight a different metric. I didn't know that.
That's neat,
now it kind of colorizes it a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. But again, for exactly what you're saying, Jeff, that's it. I don't want to sit there and stare and kind of like go back and forth. I just want to quickly glance at it and I want to see. And if it's a different color, that helps jump it out as well. So anyway, that's my Apple Watch tip for the day. How about you, sir?
Okay, so my tip of the day started out as something that when I first saw this, I'm like, oh, who in the world needs this feature? This is ridiculous. And then once I started using it, I'm like, hey, this actually works pretty well. And the feature is this. On the iPad, you have been able to drag and drop.
Oh, look at that.
Can, if you put your finger down on like a photo in the Photos app, you can hold down for a second or two and the photo sort of lifts up from the screen. And then you can swipe to a different app and you can paste it. Now you can do the same thing in your iPhone. And with the screen so small, you may say, gosh, is this even doable? But I tell you what, it works really well. I have found that if I'm holding my phone in my left hand, and so I'm using my right hand to manipulate the screen, I can use my pointer finger to hold down on like a picture and hold down for a second. And then I can just use my thumb to swipe at the bottom of the screen to swipe to a different app. So I can take a photo from the Photos app, swipe over to my Mail app, hit with my thumb, new message, and then drop the picture in. Now, you don't need to do it that way. You could also look at the photo, use the action menu, the little box with the arrow on it. Choose Mail. And you can do it that way too. But I've actually found that this method is faster. And what amazed me when I started trying it is it's not just for pictures. You can do it for you can tap on like the URL of a website and then paste that into like a text message to tell somebody, go check this out. Or you can, just last night, I was using the Dropbox app on my iPhone and I had a list of, a bunch of PDF files, and I held down on a PDF file for a second, and then I drug over to a mail message, and I dropped it right there in the mail message, and I sent somebody the PDF file.
What?
And I'm like, wow, this is actually faster than going through Dropbox's menu to share and make sure that you're sharing the actual file, not just a link to your Dropbox and everything else. So, again, when I first heard about this, I'm like, nobody's going to want to use this. And now I've decided I'm actually going to use this. So, it requires some
yeah.
sophistication with your fingers, but if you're nimble enough with using your iPhone, and anyone using an iPhone for long enough probably is, this feature really works. And what you're showing on your screen right now, and in fact, please include it, because I did not put this in my Friday post. So put this in the show notes for the episode.
Yes.
If you look at this, this person, Marcos Alonso, who works for Apple in their human interface department. This may have been his idea to actually do it in the first place. He has this short little video on Twitter that shows it in action. And once
it's great.
A picture's worth 1,000 words, or a video's worth 1,000 words. Once you watch it, you're like, oh, now I see what he's doing. And it works great. So that's
I love your example about the Dropbox thing, because you're right. If I would need to attach, I'm in Dropbox, I see a file, but if I want to attach it, I mean, I could go through the menu in Dropbox, but typically I go to the Mail app, I tap and hold to get the edit menu and do attach, and then I go to, it's just so much. That's amazing, Jeff. If I could do that, I saw this. My tip last week was using that Safari tab bar that you could tap and drag, and you could sort of hover the URL. And when I showed that, I was like, okay, this is pretty cool, but I'm not sure exactly where to use it. But now this is even becoming more clear. Like, that's exactly what I would want to do. I can tap and drag, go to a notes, go to an email, go to a message, and text it to somebody. Absolutely brilliant. I'm so glad that you yes, I will include this video in the show notes, because it really helps to see it in action. Yeah. And understand how that goes. Oh, that's great. All right, my friend, well, another week gone. Now we're on October. So thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Brett. Talk to you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.